Good evening, everyone. My name is Roseanne Kuiper, and I am a superintendent with the Thames Valley District School Board, and I have the privilege of having parent engagement as part of my portfolio work. We are very excited to be able to offer this great learning opportunity with Dr. Debbie Pushor for all of our parents and family members this evening. This event is endorsed by the Thames Valley District School Board, the Thames Valley Parent Involvement Committee, and the Thames Valley Council of Home and School Associations. I would like to let everyone know that this event is being recorded and that it will be posted on our Thames Valley website later next week. At the end of the presentation this evening, there will be an opportunity for Dr. Debbie Pushor to answer questions that you may have. If you have a question that you would like to ask, you will notice on the top right-hand corner of your screen, there is an area for you to type in your question. Now, realizing that we may not have time to answer all questions, this will also be included. We will answer the questions and we will upload those with the recording onto our board website. I hope that you enjoy this evening. I would now like to turn the microphone over to Sarah Thompson, the chairperson of the Thames Valley Parent Involvement Committee. Have a good evening.
Thank you, Roseanne. TVPIC is so happy to be part of this wonderful evening. Thank you for organizing this and bringing in the wonderful Dr. Debbie Pushor. Our goal as TVPIC is always to help connect the board and parents and talk about what matters. This is a crazy time. Everybody is in different stages with the learning at home, and some parents are loving it and some parents are hating it, and there's a whole lot of in between. So I'm really happy that Dr. Debbie Pushor is here to share some of her insights on how we can all make it through. And I do hope that all parents are finding some time while you're taking care of everybody else to do a little self-care and be kind to yourself, because this is all temporary. We will make it through this, and we'll just listen to Dr. Debbie Pushor and we'll hopefully get some tips. I'm going to introduce Arlene Morrell, chair of the board, to take it over.
Thank you. As chair of the Thames Valley Board, it is my honor to introduce Dr. Debbie Pushor. Dr. Pushor is an international leader of family engagement in education. She currently works as a professor in the Department of Curriculum Studies at the University of Saskatchewan in Canada. Most importantly, Debbie is a mother of 3 adult sons, Cone, Quinn, and Teague, and a former public school teacher, consultant, principal, and central services administrator. In her program of research, Debbie has engaged in narrative inquiries into parent engagement and leadership, a curriculum of parents, and parent knowledge. She is currently engaged in research on systematic parent engagement in an elementary and a secondary school in Saskatchewan. In her undergraduate and graduate teaching, Debbie makes central and often absent or unrepresented conversation about the position of parents in relation to the school landscape. In the Ontario and the Thames Valley context, Debbie has been instrumental in developing our practice of engaging with parents. And in my former role as chair of the Thames Valley Parent Involvement Committee and through Home and School Associations, it's been an honor to work alongside Debbie in shaping family engagement, both locally and provincially. I'm so pleased to welcome Debbie back to Thames Valley. In advance of the presentation, I would like to thank TVPIC, Thames Valley Council of Home and School Associations, Superintendent Kuiper, and the IT department within Thames Valley for their support in bringing Debbie and this evening to us. Without any further ado, I'll turn the evening over to Debbie.
Thanks so much for that wonderful introduction, Arlene, Sarah, Roseanne. So lovely to be back with you in Thames Valley. I've really appreciated, valued my relationship with you over the years, and I'm really happy to be here again this evening. As Sarah said, it's challenging times. It's a different kind of way of living, way of being, way of parenting. And so I think we can all learn from one another. There's a lot to think about at this really quite unique and historic time. So again, thanks for the invitation. Why don't we go directly into the PowerPoint? We'll get started. I very much look forward at the end to your comments, to your questions, and to being in conversation with you. All right, so I've looked at this session as learning at home, and you'll hear me talk about that during the session tonight. Very much think that what we're doing is promoting our children's learning at home. It is not homeschooling, and as I said, I'll talk about that in just a little bit. Arlene gave me a beautiful introduction. Thank you for that, Arlene. And I've put my contact information here for you in case something comes up during tonight's presentation and you want to contact me or talk more with me about it. This information will come back at the end of the evening as well. I've also put my Twitter address as well as the addresses of a couple of grad student groups that I work with. And if you're feeling a bit alone in this time, what you'll find on Twitter, there's a very rich, interesting conversation happening. Parents are part of it, educators are part of it, and it really is an opportunity to learn from one another, to learn alongside one another, and to, I guess, exchange ideas and explore thoughts. So just wanted you, if you're not on Twitter, maybe this is a great time to join that conversation. Maybe it'll be really helpful for you. If you are, if you want to tweet and be part of that, then this is a place to do so. I'm going to start with a slideshow that I prepared. It's to the song Mother by the Tenors, our Canadian group. It's just brand new. I think they released it in time for Mother's Day this year. For me, the song really captures the magic, the power of being a parent. And so I wanted to play that for you. You're going to see pictures of my own kids, friends' children, and so on throughout. And maybe this is a time for you to really be thinking about your own self as a parent and your own children and some of the ways that you learn at home together. Isn't that beautiful? I hope that brought a few tears to your eyes and a lot of precious memories to your heart. I worked with this amazing doctoral student, Momina Han, and in her work, she introduced me to this saying. She's originally from Pakistan, and I love it. And I think it really captures what that song is saying to us as well. The moment a child is born, the mother is also born. She never existed before. The woman existed, but the mother never. A mother's something absolutely new. And I think that's so true for fathers equally. This focused on mothers. We could substitute fathers for that as well. And I think it doesn't matter if you've given birth to a child, you've adopted a child, you've fostered a child, you're the person in the group home who cares for that child, you're the auntie. It doesn't matter. It's the same feeling, that sense of becoming a parent because of a child's presence in your life, and how very significant that is. I want to talk about that word parent. We're often really careful about that word because many people care for children. And I want to use the word parent in a really inclusive way, in a way that includes anyone who is in that role. So it's not naming a person, it's naming a role. And when we think of a family with parents and children, the parent is the person or the persons, if there's more than one, who have the primary caregiving role. Well, whereas the children are mainly care receiving. So as much as the field uses the terms parent and family engagement, and so do I, it would be like talking about schools without naming teachers if we talked about families and didn't name parents. It's a very unique and very important role. And so that's why I continue to use that word as well. So the word parent then names a role, and it names an act. It's a verb, to act in ways that fulfill that role. So again, just reinforcing, any one of you who may be listening tonight, any of your friends, any of your families, those people who are parents, there's multiple and diverse. And when I'm speaking tonight, please know I'm including all of you in that definition of parent. I think what we take away from that video is very much in our hearts the feeling that a parent's role in a child's life is sacred. It is precious. It's unique to any other role. And so when we think about learning at home and what's happening right now with children not being in school and not returning this year, I think what we really have to do, and what I really invite and encourage you to do, is to continue to hold your role as sacred, to continue to be a parent in your child's life and not try to take on the roles of other people who aren't currently able to do that. I'm going to say a bit more about that. So for me, education and schooling are related processes, but they're not the same thing. I don't believe we can substitute one word for the other. So here you see a picture of a home. A minute a child is born and brought into that home, that child's education begins. The parents talk to the child, hold, nurture, feed, diaper, sing, read, introduce that baby to people. It goes on and on. The education is started the very minute that child enters the home. And that education lasts forever. So if any of you are online tonight and you just have little kids, I don't want to burst your bubble, but this is a birth to forever job. As long as you're in your children's lives, you will be educating them. My children, you saw them in the video. I have 3 boys. Cohen's my oldest, and Teague and Quinn are twins, 4 years younger. And they're all grown men now, as you saw, probably as well from those images. We're still educating our kids. It's just been tax time. How do you fill out those tax forms? As they moved away from home and got apartments and had to sign lease agreements, as They established bank accounts and so on. All of that is the education that we provide our kids birth to forever. We're the ones that are there for that entire journey to help them realize their hopes and dreams. When we look at schooling then in relation to that, schooling is a really important piece of a child's education. It's the formal piece, it's the mandated piece. It's the piece done by educational professionals with years of university, lots of experience, knowledge of curriculum, of strategies, of assessment. And so they play a very significant and important role, as you all know, in your children's education. But if we keep it in perspective, schooling is just one part of that birth to forever education. We've started that education at birth. Kids come to schools 3, 4, 5, 6 years after, with 6 years of education experience already. They leave us in Thames Valley, maybe about 18 years of age, decades more education that's going to be happening. So both are important, they're complementary, and we want to really honor each piece of that process, I think. And that's the one we're going to take a bit more of a look at now. This is my math. I hope none of you out there are going to say to me, I can't calculate because it isn't my best strength. We have 365 days in a year. Let's assume kids sleep 9 of those out of the 24 hours that every day presents. So just using that as an average, that gives us 365 days. Kids are awake 15 hours of that time, 5,475 hours. That's how much time they have to spend in the year. In Saskatchewan, it may be slightly different in Ontario, but it's probably very similar. Teachers are mandated to spend 950 contact hours with children. So if we take that 950 out of the 5,475, kids are in school 17% of their year. All right, so think of that. The schooling piece of their education is 17%. That means, folks, those of you that are parents, 83% of the year kids are out of school engaged in their education with us, with hockey coaches, music, tutors, and so on. So that's the breakdown of time, and sometimes we're surprised by that. Now we're in a unique situation with COVID-19, and school has closed, at least for us in Saskatchewan, I think very much similar in Ontario, for 2.5 months. Our kids were out of school about the middle of March. So 2.5 months is 25% of their school year they won't be spending in the school buildings this year. So they've lost, and I use that term, but I don't really mean it, but of the 17% of the time they'd be in school buildings, they're losing 25% of that, or about 4%, 4.25%, right? Lost time in schools. So when we think of that and we add that all together, it means that kids are going to be out of school 87% of their year this year instead of 83. It kind of puts things in perspective, doesn't it? So we've only increased their out of school time by 4%. And if you think that parents, you're already responsible for the education of your kids 83%, you've only now got another 4. And you don't have it all by yourself because there's still remote teaching and learning happening as well. So when we get anxious, when we think about this, when we feel the constraints, when we worry whether there'll be gaps, when we ask if our kids will be ready for the next grade, I think we just have to put this back into that bigger picture. So how can you be engaged with your children in their learning at home in ways that make sense for you as a parent, keeping that role of parent as unique, as special, as sacred? So when we're talking about parent engagement, we're talking about parents' authentic and meaningful place and voice in their children's teaching and learning, right? So really key words there are authentic. This dad and his son are building something for their home, something they've wanted to do. That's authentic. And so obviously it's meaningful for them because they have something that they're working toward in a purposeful way. So what we want to do as parents as we think about learning at home is think about how do we engage with our children in ways that enhance their numeracy, their literacy, their scientific knowledge, and so on, but keep us as parents in their lives and keep the learning natural, authentic, and meaningful. And again, lots of ways. This may not be a good example. Your pools are probably closed as well, and even your playgrounds. But what are all of the things we do as we construct with our children? We bake with our children. We help them learn to ride a bike. We do numeracy or literacy types of activities with them. We reinforce their culture and their identity. We work in the garden with plants, with the environment. We learn life skills like shopping, organizing a list, working on a budget, the dance, the movement, the physical activity, the health, the kinds of things that are part of our curriculum. Think about the context in your specific area, the things that families do. Are they farmers? Do they raise horses? What are the kinds of things that they do that children could learn with and from them on? And of course, you saw the arts, the guitar, the music, and so on. So when we think about that, it's quite easy for parents to be engaged in teaching and learning in natural, in authentic, and meaningful kinds of ways. Excuse me, those are the kinds of things that I really encourage you to do, to continue to do. They're the ones that are going to make memories, that are going to bring joy, that are going to enrich your children's lives and your own. They'll be the ones that 10 years from now, you'll be sitting around talking and laughing and remembering. So when we're talking about parent engagement, one of the very critical attributes of that is it's parents engaged as parents, not as pretend teachers or pseudo teachers. You did not sign up for this. You did not decide to homeschool your child. We just have remote learning happening. And so your role doesn't change in this. You continue to engage as a parent, to promote learning, to talk about learning, to do the kinds of things that you do as a family. And the teachers, in the ways that they have to teach remotely, will continue to be responsible for the schooling piece. That's why I say that your role right now is to promote, to support, to lead learning at home, and not be a homeschool parent, right? Parents who choose to homeschool make a very conscious decision to take on both the education and the schooling of their children, to learn the curriculum, the instructional strategies, the assessment strategies, and so on. That's not what you're doing right now. You're supporting the learning at home, maybe bumping it from 83 towards 87%. So COVID-19 has caused the place of learning to change from schools to homes. It's changed the person leading the learning to change as well. No longer the teachers, because they don't live in your house, but now the parents are leading, managing, supporting that. And so correspondingly, when those other two things change, the nature of the learning that's happening in our homes has to change as well. It just makes sense. Our kitchens don't look like classrooms, our homes don't look like schools. And so we really have to honor the place and the people and the type of learning that we have this opportunity to engage with and celebrate. This is a page from my friend Jody's Facebook. I'm using it with her permission, but I did blur it a little bit. This is her son, Keelen. He's in grade 3 and he's 8 years old. And you'll see Keelen's on a scooter and he's just got a ramp there. There's other pictures on Jody's Facebook page during the building process. Keelen and his dad down on the garage floor, tools, measuring tapes, all that kind of thing. And then this was actually a video where Keelen took a bit of a leap, a little jump off the end of that ramp. So Innocently, naturally, authentically, that was something Keelen wanted, and Keelen and his dad engaged in and did that. But look at the curriculum that is happening in a project like this. So what I did is I went to the Saskatchewan grade 3 curriculum. I went to the various subject areas and picked a topic that was related or relevant. And for each one of them, I picked a couple of curricular outcomes. So you can see then linear measurement, shape and space. Here in language arts, communicating ideas related to topics, problems, questions, or issues. Easy to follow representation. So think of the kind of work that we do to teach kids to follow directions and to make a diagram and to follow the steps of something. Interacting appropriately with others, sharing ideas, completing tasks. Language arts work. Phys ed, the active living. If I played the whole video, you'd see him coming off that ramp. So using his body skillfully in space, right? Looking at time, speed, force, flow. You can see how all of those kinds of things are curriculum outcomes being addressed, but through education in an informal kind of way. I remember a time when Cohen was in high school. Cohen's our oldest and he loves bikes, loved bikes then. And he and his dad built a ramp, Lori, for his physics class. And oh my gosh, you're just seeing the size of that ramp, and Cohen came off of that just flying. So when you talk about time, speed, force, and flow, they took it apart and made it a little bit smaller with a little bit lesser of an angle when they realized how scary it actually was. So then when we think about Keelen's health outcomes, understanding safe behaviors and practices to increase the safety of self and others. In social studies, we see resources and wealth. Is this a need, Keelen, or a want? And how does a ramp and how does your scooter enable you to engage with technologies that are impacting your life? To see the possibilities if parents are talking about things. I'm not ever expecting that they'll know the curriculum outcomes or speak in curriculum ways with their children, but they're just doing it naturally. These are the kinds of things that are coming up in the daily lives of kids every day. Maecee's Keelen's oldest sister, so when I asked Jody if I could use Keelen's picture, she sent me this one of Maecee as well. Keelen's older sister who's in grade 7 and age 12. And Jody wanted to share that Maecee's grandma was teaching her how to make bread. So that was a project Maecee had been engaging with her grandma. And again, let's look at some of those curricular outcomes. So this time with Maecee being in grade 7, I looked at the grade 7 curriculum. If we look in the unit on number and math, she's learning decimals, she's learning fractions, she's learning mixed numbers, fractional percents, all of those kinds of things she has to do as she measures and works to make that bread. Science, a couple of different units that she's working toward in curriculum outcomes, mixtures and solutions, that whole idea of yeast mixing with warm water and sugar, etc., and also heat and temperature, what makes the bread rise, those kinds of combinations of things. Again, language arts all across our curriculum, and there's a big component called compose and create. So using language, oral language, to interact purposefully and appropriately. Phys ed, active living, but with a focus on nutrition rather than movement and the maintenance of a healthy body. In health, the unit on understanding skills and competences. So talking about personal food choices, about nutritional knowledge and information, how much of that delicious bread should you really be eating, all those kinds of fun things. Social studies, this would be a really fun one, I think, to do right now in this time of COVID. Resources and wealth, the influence of resources on economic conditions. We know many families have been affected hugely economically. We know some of our children aren't getting lunches. What amazing conversations you could have with your children about the influence of resources in a time when economics suddenly changes significantly, perhaps for their family, perhaps for other family members, perhaps for friends. Another thing I learned of recently, and I'm just going to throw out a few examples, and I want you to be thinking about, well, what am I doing with my kids? So again, I'm naming the curriculum outcomes for you because I'm a teacher. What I'm wanting you to think about when you're doing those things with your kids is there's always lots of curriculum unfolding, and your teacher, your child's teacher, can often help you see that or understand it. A lot of it you do just naturally. So in this instance, in this family, the grandparent and grandchild, the grandma told me this story where her little one, their little grandchild, gets up early in the morning before everyone else so they can bake or cook together when it's just the two of them and they have that time. And they're putting together a family recipe book that's kind of like a family storybook as well. So the little girl writes up the recipe, they've made it, she draws pictures of it, they take photographs of it, they tell stories about who in the family loves it, where did the recipe come from, you know, all of those special kinds of family stories around food. And so again, think of, just like with Keelen and with Maecee, you can just name and see the math, the literacy, the science, the health, all playing out in this beautiful example. The blanket fort is a fun one. We have a wonderful department executive assistant. Her name is Brittany, and she has a little boy, Jace, and she's a single parent. Jace is in kindergarten. And so I had emailed her one day about some work-related stuff, and I said, hey, Britt, how are you doing? And she kind of laughed and she said, you know what I've done, Deb? We've built a blanket fort in the living room, so Jace has a place to go when I have to have a Zoom meeting. And so we laughed about it. It started out of necessity, or at least sanity, made some sanity, created some sanity for her. But just again, think about all of the kinds of things that can happen with a blanket fort, right? Structures, weight, dimensions, area, and then all of the things once you've built that fort that you can do within it. This is a fun one. I pulled this one off Twitter. I really loved it. A virtual family vacation. You can see Kirsty Russell and follow her if you want on Twitter. She's Australian, as you'll see. But they had, as a family, planned a large European vacation this year. And of course, they didn't get to go on that family vacation. So they've been doing it virtually instead. And she's been tweeting about it as they've gone along. Everything from planning their airplane ride and the snacks they were going to take on the plane and the activities they were going to do on the plane, to where they were going to travel, the mapping skills, the research, the inquiry, looking at going virtually to the museums, the galleries, the zoos, the places they had wanted to see, and then cooking food at night. So if they were virtually in Italy, as they were in this one, then making ossobuco for dinner. So again, the literacy, the numeracy, all of that happening as they cook dinner. So imagine how fun and how memory making this could be as a family doing it together and not losing totally that vacation they were going to have, but maybe even creating more anticipation for it. And when they do get that chance, going with so much more information and background knowledge and understanding of the history of the places and so on. But how much fun could this be? Again, any age. You could be doing this with little kids, you could be doing this with your high school kids just as easily. Oh, there's my cursor here. This one is one, you'll see Rowland at the back of the screen. He's got the small dots on his blue shirt. He's a high school teacher at Warman High School here in Saskatchewan. He's an English teacher and a department head, and he planned this amazing project that he's been doing with kids in his classroom. But this could be something parents and teens could do at home without Brett as well. So the idea is, when they were in Brett's classroom, he gave them about 5 novels to choose from, and the kids took them home, shared them with their parents, and together the parent and the teen decided what book they wanted to read. So without Brett, you could still put together a group of books, say what might we want to read, maybe you'd get ideas from your child's teacher and have a look at that and then read that book together. And one of the things that Brett does when he supports it in school is the family creates a schedule. How much are we going to read? How often? When are we going to meet together? How are we going to talk about our book and so on? So again, you can see how kitchen table-ish that could be, that you could be doing that in your living room or at your kitchen table. And then the kinds of projects he did with them could be duplicated at home too. So choose a passage in the book that you think reflects our family values, each parent and student doing this separately, and choose one that you think really challenges maybe some core beliefs that we hold. And then let's set a date to get together and have tea on Sunday night and talk about what passage did you choose? Oh, that's interesting. And why did you choose it? And having just this amazing, rich conversation together about a piece of literature. Another thing Brett did that could be easily done as a home project instead is choosing a theme or an issue, a symbol, something important in the novel that you've identified, and then thinking about that in relation to your own family. And again, you could do that in lots of ways, depending on how talented you are in terms of music or art or dance or writing or whatever it is your family's strengths are. So Brett, for example, last year had a boy with his mom and dad. They were both engaged and they were reading A Brave New World, and they were talking about self-esteem and whether you're proud of who you are, whether you change who you are, and so on. And was the character in the story given a chance to really be himself, and so on. And so they chose to play the song, I Love You Just the Way You Are. And so the son played it on the piano, the dad played on the drums, and the mom sang. And they put this piece together. But think about all of the conversation and talking and decision making around the story and finding meaning and making it connect to their own family and then using their own talents to share it. Again, beautifully done in Brett's English classes, but could just as easily be a really wonderful project for you to devise at home on your own. So I'm sharing all of these examples, trying to highlight how much rich learning and education is happening as we engage with our kids in these ways, because I want you to feel this belief, this sense that you can effectively engage with and support your child's learning, no matter how old they are. Stephen Constantino from the United States writes about parent efficacy. That word efficacy is an interesting one. But the idea that we know we can support our kids' learning, that belief that we can. And so out of COVID-19, my dream would be that we'd all come out of this experience knowing our children as learners in new ways, having had the opportunity to engage with them, and to feel strong in ourselves that we're promoting learning in our home all the time, in all we do, whether it's talking about the news that we've just watched or an article in the newspaper and so on. So one of the things about parent engagement that's so important is that everyone is strengthened. So one of the most important things I think we can develop is this sense of efficacy, being able to support kids' learning. One of the ways that we can be efficacious, if I can use a word like that, would be to use our parent knowledge. So again, when I talk to you, education is that birth to forever process. You've been with that child in your life for quite a long time, potentially, right? And because of that, you have knowledge of the child, of who they are, of how they learn, of their history, of their likes and dislikes, what makes them laugh, what makes them cry, what their health record is. You know that face when the child is uncomfortable that no one else would recognize, but you know it because you see it and you live with that child in that complex place of a home. Caring for kids, nurturing kids is complex work, and homes are complex places because of the multiple variables and multiple people, all of the things that are going on. So for you to feel like you can support your kids' learning, you want to be able to draw on your parent knowledge, to know what it is, to believe in it, to stand up for it, to share it with teachers. So when you act with parent efficacy, if we're talking learning at home in this instance, where you're not trying to be the teacher, you're doing the natural, authentic things you do, and you're just supporting your child, what I think you could do is share with your child's teacher how you're spending your time. Are you making that recipe book, building the blanket fort? Are you checking the cattle? Are you planting a garden, etc.? And then have the child, because this is have the teacher name that for you, because this is the teacher's role. The teacher's the one that's knowledgeable about curriculum, and say, hey, Arlene, this is what I've been doing with Cohen. What do you think I've been achieving? Like, help me understand some of the learning from your perspective. So here we're bringing teacher knowledge and parent knowledge together. And what we can do, and the reason we might want to know that is so we feel good about what we're doing, so we feel efficacious, so we feel like we can make a difference to our kids' learning. And if we tell our teachers what materials we have in our home, how much time we have, I'm working shift work, I'm working 2 jobs, I am online myself during the day, I have a baby at home, whatever it is, and space, indoor and outdoor, what kind of space do we have for activities and engagement, what kind of technology, we know there's real differences across everyone's families. If we tell them that, we give the teacher the opportunity to walk alongside us and to say, you know what, I have an idea. You've been doing this really cool family virtual journey. Here's an idea you could do to just take that one step further, or to expand it, or maybe to enrich it. Or if you did this, you'd have a science element to it as well. So that you and the parent, the teacher and the parent together become partners, teacher knowledge honored, parent knowledge honored. And all that teacher is doing is really guiding us, assuring us, helping us see the wonderful work that we're already doing. Not giving us work to do, supporting what's already unfolding in our home, but just helping to name it so we feel the value of it. In some instances, we also have our children remote learning, right? They're on Zoom, or they're on, I'm not sure which platforms you're using in Thames Valley, right? So again, I'm seeing lots of things on Twitter right now that are saying families are disengaging or kids are disengaging, that more of them were coming to the Zoom meetings, more of them were doing some of the activities than they are now, right? We're at a lull. So you know your child better than anybody else. How about a phone call, an email, a seesaw conversation with your child's teacher, and just say, here's what I see in my child, here's what I know. Here's some ideas that I think would help, right? And then use your parent knowledge to support the teacher in the remote learning they're doing. So they're supporting us in the first instance by sharing their knowledge. We're supporting them now in the second instance by sharing our parent knowledge. Right? So the more the teacher knows your child, understands what's helping, what isn't, what's getting in the way, what's causing frustration, what's easy, what's hard, when they're restless, then you can help the teacher do a better job teaching your child in a remote learning context. You see things that teacher just isn't going to see. And so again, it's that support for both types of learning. And honestly, that 4% is going to just get used so beautifully. So much good learning could happen when we're supporting each other in these 2 reciprocal kinds of ways. There's my boys, a little bit more grown up. They're all big and bearded and everything now. But you look at those faces, they have one mom, right? And it's me. They have one dad, Lori. And our role in their lives is precious and sacred, and we need to honor that even in these very difficult and challenging times. I've probably told this story at different presentations in Thames Valley before. Cohen is the middle boy, he's my oldest. He was in middle years, early high school, and he had an English paper to write. He wrote the paper and he was buzzing outside, and I was working and he at home, and he brought me his paper. He said, "Hey Mom, I wrote my paper. Do you want to read it?" And I said, "Yes, I'd love to, of course." So he left his paper with me and he went off to ride his bike. And so I read his paper and it was really great. It was really good. But I'm also a teacher. I forgot that he asked me as a mom, right? So I did my teacher thing. And I read that paper and the first paragraph was strong and there was kind of a leap to the next idea. So with a pencil, I wrote in the margin and I said, "Hon, I think you could fill this idea out a little bit more. It feels like you're kind of missing something in your writing." And then as I read, I noticed sometimes he was writing in present tense and sometimes in past. And so I said, you know, it doesn't matter which tense you use, but you kind of want to be consistent all the way through. So I kept working. I set his paper on my desk and he came back from biking and he's all pumped. "Hey Mom, did you read my paper?" And I said, "I did," and I handed it to him. He had a look on his face like you see there, a joyous look. He'd been out biking, one of his most favorite things. And he was happy about his paper and he was waiting for me to say something. And he looked at the marks on his paper and his face fell. And I thought he was gonna cry, my teenage boy. I literally thought he was gonna cry. And he looked me in the eyes and he said, "Mom, I just wanted you to be my mom," right? I forgot my role is sacred. He's gonna have lots of teachers that are gonna edit his English papers over time. He's not gonna have as many people in his life who are always his cheerleader that say what a great idea it was, how much you enjoyed that paper, and do the celebrating piece of it, right? So we, I think in all of this, just have a lot of things to keep in our mind, right? What is our role? How do we stay parents in this? How do we love and nurture our kids and all come out at the other end of this stronger than when we went in, or at least not less strong? How do we make sure we're having joyous moments and honoring the learning that's naturally unfolding, celebrating it, promoting it, talking to teachers about it? I think that's the work that we have during this period of time. So I'm going to leave it at that. I'm going to turn it over to Roseanne for question and answer time. And I'm really excited to hear what you're thinking and the ideas that you have, the things that you're doing with your children currently. So.
Thank you
so much.
Thank you, Debbie. So as we keep you live to answer some of these questions, we really thank you for the wonderful presentation, but also for this opportunity, because we do have some questions. And so an opportunity for you to answer these would be excellent. Wonderful. So one question coming in, and I'm just scrolling. It says that this one parent asks, "My daughter is struggling with me trying to help her or to teach her when it is for schoolwork. I need some advice on that, please."
Her daughter still has a teacher, and let the teacher do that part. That would be my advice, right? She doesn't need to take that on. The teacher is still schooling in a remote learning context. I think the thing that she could do is say to the teacher, "This is the kind of trouble my daughter is having. These are the kinds of emotions she's expressing when she's trying to work on this," and give that back to the teacher, right? So I think we felt like, because they're in our homes now, right, at our kitchen tables and counters and so on, that we now have to be teachers. And I really, really believe we don't, right? But Thames Valley has all kinds of wonderful supports, lots of ways to reach out to teachers. So I guess what I'm really saying tonight is let the teacher be the teacher and keep being the mom.
Thank you for that, Debbie. And I'm sure there will be some overlap in some of these questions and answers.
Sure.
The next question comes, how do you get your child to busy themselves while you are working, but doing something beneficial rather than playing Fortnite for hours?
Well, and I guess that's why Britt built that blanket fort, right? So maybe it depends on how old that child is too. We're only human and there's only so much we can do. And I'm just hearing so many stories about families who are stressed and things because they're trying to be a full-time employee and a full-time parent and take on teaching roles for which they're not trained, right? So I think, again, it just trying to talk with your son or daughter, son, I think in this instance, and just say, let's talk about some things that you could do that would be worthwhile. So we know that we can limit our kids' screen time. What other kinds of materials or projects or things could we have available that child could do more independently? Whether that's building materials or art materials or some kind of outside activity or so on. I mean, what's reasonable without supervision, right? But I think what are the things that kids would be doing if it was a Saturday? Playing a board game, maybe playing cards, all those kinds of things. There's a lot of really great virtual visits you can do to museums and aquariums and so on. So I think it'd be just kind of sitting down and doing some talking with that student and making kind of a commitment about what will you do during the day, and let's make a little bit of a plan for that. Limiting screen time is a parent's role, right? We need to do that. We talk about that all the time. So I think, again, for setting those limits and parameters and then making sure there's lots of other choices that are good choices. So screen time doesn't become a default, right?
Well, and that's a great lead in, Debbie, to one of our next comments and questions. So this parent guardian says, I'm interested in your take on TV screen time. I've done a lot of work buying craft supplies, books, games, blocks, but my 5-year-old can only entertain herself for a short time, which is totally understandable.
Yeah.
When she's left alone, she's often back and forth to meetings all day also, this parent. And just wondering how do you balance that, because it does there's a lot of reliance on screens.
For sure. And is there someone else, do you know, Roseanne, so if she's back and forth to meetings, is she back and forth to virtual meetings in her own home, or is there someone else in the home too? Do we know?
I don't have all the details there, but I'm assuming it's working from home. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. And then I think we want lots of, not just crafts that need guidance or materials. You don't want them to have the paint without you being there or whatever, but what are some of those more play-based kinds of activities where kids are just pretending and playing and making up their own kind of play? So you think about what we're doing in our pre-kindergarten and kindergarten, some of our grade 1 classes where we're using that play-based approach, and kids are getting really great at taking that learning over on them on their own. Is it, so the less structured the activity, the more open-ended the materials in the home, probably the more possible that the child's able to engage for a little bit longer time. And we know with 5-year-olds, there's a limit to that, right? And so whether that means that the way that we schedule our workday or the types of breaks we make or the times that we work in the day, we need to consider that. I mean, a mom like that one, a parent like that one has taken on 2 full-time roles and is trying to do them in one position, right? So there has to be compromises, and it's a matter of deciding where those might be. Again, if there's older siblings, how can those older kids maybe lead an activity or be a part of something that helps support the younger ones' engagement. So as they're playing and doing something together, they all have different roles, right? I know when we were kids, we didn't have carpet and things. We had linoleum in our home on the farmhouse, and we loved it when Mom washed the kitchen floor because we turned the chairs all upside down in the living room and put blankets over them, and we could play for quite a long time while she got some of her housework done. So often if you have that combination of ages, how do you play off of that as well? So no magic answer for sure. But I think sometimes if we think about what we're giving them and how open-ended it is, it can help.
Excellent. And again, there will be overlap with this one. This next comment is, I do feel that I am an engaged parent with the baking, exercising, etc. But how do I do this and get the formal homework done? I am having a very difficult time engaging my child in that formal education piece.
Yeah, and I think we have to let go of that. We're asking so much of ourselves. And again, I think that's something where if the parent could say, what do I know about my child? How engaged are they? When are they? What things aren't they engaging with? How much time seems to be possible, and so on. And then give that parent knowledge, give that insight to the teacher. And now I think it's the teacher's responsibility to do the engagement with the remote learning. So the fact is that the teacher is still the teacher, even though, right, we're in a different place. Not as much is going to get done, we all know that. But I think that some of those things that we're taking on, teachers are better positioned to take them on perhaps than we are.
Excellent. And I'll combine two questions here because they're similar. So in one situation, talking about their son, in another, it's their teens, how to help them with the organization of their work, because a lot may be coming at them from different teachers, and how to help them stay on task rather than procrastinating.
Yeah.
And we know social media creeps in there with TikTok, Snapchat, FaceTime.
Yeah,
so
for sure.
Those struggles that parents are facing.
Yeah. I don't know if you can see my wall behind me, right? So I'm in an office at home, but we also put a Murphy bed in it, so we'd have a spare room for when people came. And so if you can see my wall, I've turned my surface into a sticky note organizational color-coded calendar. And that's just the way I think. But I do think we need cues and prompts. So is there a space in the home that we can create kind of a visual reminder, a visual calendar, maybe for different members of the family, with a bit of a schedule and a plan and a commitment for what are you going to get done today, right? So what are the two main jobs that you have for today? When would you like to do them? How much time do you think they're going to take? Okay, so you want to put that at 10 o'clock, let's put that there. Then one more later, okay, you want a bit of a break, you want to get outside for a bit, great. Now let's put this one here. I don't think even in schools we do a really great job of teaching organizational skills, keeping a calendar, making a to-do list, timing how long something's going to take us, budgeting our time. And so I think we have a really great opportunity right now. My twin boys, Teague and Quinn, tease each other. One's a lawyer and one's in film production, right? So I think we have a left and a right brain child. But the joke within our family is Teague's really good at organization because he had a girlfriend who color-coded everything. So I do think there's skills that we can consciously teach about organization, scheduling, and so on in a way that works. But I think it's that reasonable amount, not expecting a child to spend a school day the way they would at school. It's going to be really different than that. So more priorities, scheduling, but letting the child, the student, the teen make those decisions, but make a commitment that I'll have this done by the end of the day. And I'm going to use my time in this way. So I'd like to sleep in a bit. I'm going to get that project done. I'm going to go outside for a bit into the yard, and then I'm going to come back and do this other thing. We know the more ownership we give kids, the more they do. So how much of it can they own and how little of it can we own? My friend Vernon always says that my name isn't on that report card, my son's is. So just that reminder not to take over things that belong to our kids, and that are maybe better supported in some ways by their teacher than their parent.
Excellent. And there were a couple of comments that I could even speak to. Some were just with students receiving so much work and feeling that they have fallen behind and they're so overwhelmed that they just don't know where to go next. So with that, I truly would recommend reaching out to the teacher and having that conversation and just really being open and saying what's happening and what the struggles are. And we need to find a place where we can support your son or daughter in moving forward so they're not overwhelmed. And so they know there is a way out of this, them feeling overwhelmed, and there is a place to start and that we're in this together.
Yeah, and again, I think it's like I said, Roseanne, using parent knowledge and teacher knowledge together. How do I inform you as a teacher about workload, reasonable expectations, the way my son or daughter is feeling, their attitudes, their motivation, so that you can then tailor how much you're asking and vice versa, right? So I think that teachers and parents talking together is the most important thing we could do.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
All right, the next one, my teenage daughter is really struggling mentally, being stuck at home, and trying to find the motivation to do not only schoolwork, but just basic everyday self-care activities. Do you have any suggestions on how to support her in her schooling and her mental well-being?
Yeah, well, I would definitely prioritize mental well-being over anything else, because we're not going to get the schooling if we don't have the mental well-being, right? So knowing her daughter, what does she love to do? What kinds of things make her joyous? What's possible within this environment in which they're living, and how can that become the focus? You know, it's hard to give ideas if you don't know the child in person, but that parent does. So what would it be that would bring joy, that would change the routine, something maybe they could do together? Sometimes when we're in our homes right now, we're always all together and we don't get that one-on-one time, child and parent. And I think that can be really, really important. So can they even just make a lemonade and go out and sit in the yard together, just the two of them, and have a mom-daughter talk, or, you know, spend that time. I think sometimes the proximity and the closeness we forget, because we feel like we've been together a lot, but we haven't been together in that very individualized, special kind of way. So how can we create some of that? And maybe out of those conversations, they can determine together some fun things they could do or some ways they could spend time that would shift. And I would say just back off on that schoolwork for a little bit. I think we have to if our children are well physically or mentally, right? Doesn't mean that there isn't lots of learning going to still take place, as I hope I was able to show, but just not schoolwork, right? At this, until some of the other things are back in place, right?
Right, and just to add to that, Debbie, on our Thames Valley District School Board website, right on the main page, we have an extensive amount of literature and links and supports for mental wellness and mental well-being. So I would direct any parent, anyone who is going through challenging times or feeling overwhelmed to visit our board website, because we do have a lot of great resources and contacts available. So again, just knowing that you're not alone.
Yeah, so important.
A few other questions, and I think there will be overlap again, Debbie, but parents who have special needs children, and again, finding that balance. So they're working, they're trying to keep things balanced, but just feeling so overwhelmed. Some parents here mentions working 10-hour days, trying to help their children with special needs, and then the learning on top. So again, I think you're going to echo some of the messaging you've already said.
Yeah, for sure. We are human. We can do so much, right? And no one can ask more of us. They're calling this a crisis, a COVID crisis, and it is in some ways, right? And when we've changed so much about our lives, then we have a new reality. So what we have to do is adjust our expectations for the new reality, not a previous one, right? And that's why I did that little math piece, right? They're only at a school, like, so that being at home went from 83 to 87. They're not losing a lot, right? In the whole scheme of things, we get worried. We talk gaps, we talked missed information and so on. We're all in this together. Whatever's being missed, we're all missing. So we'll pick up where we were before. And so I think, you know, my message again would be love your child, spend quality time, make sure that you go to bed as happy as you can at night, and that they do, and that tomorrow's a new day. There's just a reality to what we're able to do with time, physical energy, and so on. And the stress and the worry is not helping anybody. And so our best gift to ourselves is to let go and be in the moment and really make the most out of that moment.
Thank you for that. And so interesting, we had one question posed by a parent, but who was also a teacher. Mm-hmm. And finding that balance when they have their little ones under their feet, when they're trying to lead the learning for their class of students. And so then actually there is a response that I'll read.
I love it.
Yeah, it's from a parent and a teacher. It says, I'm a teacher and a parent to 3 young children, trying to balance working and supporting my students and their families, as well as being a mom to her own, can be very challenging. The parents of her students know exactly what she's facing. So she's being open and putting that out there. She encourages all parents participating in this presentation to open up the conversation with your child's teacher and just share your realities, because it does make a difference. Teachers have the professional training, yes, maybe to differentiate and personalize instruction where needed, but you know what? They're there to support you. It says during distance learning, it is needed to share your realities. And I think we've heard that through Dr. Debbie Pushor saying that this evening. I know a lot of messaging coming from Thames Valley is we need that communication. We need that relationship because we're in this together.
Yeah, for sure. And, you know, I've seen some posts lately too, where parents have just applauded teachers for calling out and just reaching out to them, not to give a new package of information, not to ask how things are going on Seesaw, not to find out how much progress the child has made, but to pick up the phone, to make a phone call and say, how are you? How are you? And that's, I think, the most important thing that we can do right now. We phone that family, if I'm speaking as a teacher, and I say, how are you? What's working and what isn't? What are you doing at home? What are your hopes and dreams for getting through this COVID-19 period? And how can I help you with that? So it's like turning schooling on its head. Instead of always the teacher sending home the learning and we're supposed to support it, what if the teacher phones us and says, what learning is happening and how can I support you, right? So natural and authentic, supporting the things that are already happening there. But the best thing for everyone's health and well-being, I think, is talking together. Teachers will feel supported by parents, parents will feel supported by teachers, and so will children. And I think that's the best gift that we can give one another right now, is relationship, caring, concern, right? All of those kinds of things. I don't know if any of you have seen, but we've used the slogan with my graduate students in some of the work that we've done out here. We call it the gentle revolution, right? Because we want, the gentle revolution is to build stronger relationships between parents and teachers. And we call it a revolution, but just jot that word revolution down if you have a chance. REVOL, keeps going, but you look at that backwards, the word love is in it. Revolution is in it, revolution based on love. We want to change the way we interact together as parents and teachers because of love and care and concern for one another, for our children, for our families, for our schools. And so the best way to do that is share our expertise back and forth. We both have specialized knowledge and specialized expertise, and we're stronger when we put them side by side than we are when we work by ourselves in whatever place. So I think it's huge. Another message that I saw just recently said schools with strong family engagement are getting stronger. The engagement's getting stronger. Schools that had weak relationships between parents and teachers before this started, the gap is getting bigger. So we have to change that, right? We should all be using this time to learn how to talk together, learn from one another, work together in new ways. We have a moment, and we might have an opportunity to really make use of that moment, I think.
Excellent. All right, so this next question is a little different. My 9-year-old son is pretty self-sufficient. So I have been able to follow my 8-hour working schedule during the day from home and let him make up and follow his schedule, schoolwork, reading, screen time. But recently I noticed that it is challenging for him to manage or arrange his time properly. I guess it is too early to let maybe a 9-year-old take on all this planning by himself. Would it be better if I break my working time into 2 or 3 parts and spend more time with my son?
Yeah. You know, she knows her son better than any of us, so it's hard to say, but I think that, you know, age 9, we're talking about grade 4, so that check-in time is always really valuable, even if it's just short, right? But can you even put in your work day the opportunity for half an hour where you have some quality time with your son, take a little break, then go back, even if you have to extend your day by a few minutes or work a little bit in the evening, if you can do that. But just to have that sort of connection time. I think we all need it. It's human nature, right? When we're at work and when we're in our normal workplaces, we don't sit at our desk without interacting. We go to check on someone else or say hello or ask if they want to get a coffee or something, right? So how do we build that little bit of break time, social break time in for our kids too, right? Her son sounds amazing, by the way. Let's applaud her for that.
Yes, exactly. And then I guess we're coming near the end of our questions. One other question is, how, as a parent, do you make sure that my child's ready for their next grade level? How are they doing enough?
Yeah. Readiness is a concept. Yeah, I always struggle with that one, right? So when children are born, we say they're born ready to learn. But then when we have our early learners go to pre-kindergarten or kindergarten, we often say, well, they're not ready. Well, what happens on the way to school that they lose their readiness, right? Kids are always ready and they're always learning something. It's a developmental continuum. So I think, you know, I trust in our educators. I trust in teachers. We all know there's been this shift in how learning's happened. And so how will the educators next year look at where that child is and then say, okay, what comes next? You know, I think we know families, I know lots of families from Bangladesh or Pakistan, and they take their children out of school and go back and visit family for 2 or 3 months. We know people, you know, take sabbaticals and travel around the world. We know kids get sick, parents get sick, all kinds of things interrupt learning all the time. And those families figure that out, right? It's just that we're all in the same boat right now, that we're starting to be worried about, will we be ready? What will we have missed? But I think we just have to remember learning is happening. Lots of rich learning is happening. It's not like it's stopped, and it will continue, right? And I think it's our kids that drive curriculum and teaching, not curriculum that drives our kids. So our kids are in the right place right now. And the curriculum and the teacher strategies to mesh with that are what makes that teacher a professional. So I think we have to believe all the way along that our kids are all right, as long as we're keeping them healthy mentally, physically, and so on, right? And that they're learning all the time, every day, and it's just taking another form. It's not a gap, it's just different. And we trust in Thames Valley when they return to take a look at where things are at and to keep it moving.
Excellent. So there were a couple comments that I'm going to read. They're not per se questions, but before I do that, I just want to let all of our participants know that we tried to go through the questions and theme them the best we can, but we will go back through those, and those that we will answer in more detail will be published with the recording onto our board website. So, but also know that a question that maybe if it wasn't answered to what you were hoping, if we didn't, if it wasn't clear to us in our answering, or if there's still another question, again, I think our theme here is you're not alone. Reach out to your educator, to your school's principal, to whoever you feel that could answer that question for you. And so before I turn it over to Debbie, I just want to read a couple of these last comments.
Nice.
Amazing presentation. Thank you for putting our role as parents and educators in perspective. We all too often get caught up in fostering our children's success in schooling that we forget children are learning all the time. This is especially true now that children are completing the duration of the school year from home. And then another parent says, thank you for sharing that we are only human. I think a lot of us parents are really being hard on ourselves. Yeah. And I know I, for one, needed to hear this.
Nice, nice. Thank you so much.
I'm going to turn it over to you now, Debbie, for some closing comments or words.
Right, thanks so much. I want to come back to that statement that a parent is a sacred role, right? We are worrying about so many things, our own work, our family economics, our kids learning, etc. And I think we just have to remember who we are as a family, why we're important to one another, the roles we play in each other's lives, and how significant that is. And I think we want to hold on to that. So we just want our family to be as strong coming out of it as they were coming in, right? Definitely not less so. And so we need to be kind, be human. We need to recognize who we are and who we're not. We are not teachers, most of us. And so we can't take that on. We haven't had that training. We don't have that experience. We can nurture learning like parents. And I think the examples show all kinds of rich learning that's happening. We're not losing this time. We're just spending it differently. And so, hug your kids, give yourself a pat on the back, be kind to yourself. I know lots of nights when my kids were little, I went to bed and felt like I should have done more of this or I should have done more of that. And yet, I sit together with my big grown-up boys sometimes and they tell stories about, the fact that we spent entire Sundays sometimes in our pajamas reading Harry Potter for 12 hours and the crazy gingerbread house that we made that one Christmas that the dog ate and so on. I mean, the things our kids are going to hold on to are the ones we want to put our time and energy into, because those are the ones that are going to carry them through birth to forever and help them realize their dreams. So just, be a parent, love your kids, love yourself, strengthen your family, do what you can, and the world is not going to fall apart because they haven't done 2-digit by 2-digit multiplication right to the end of the page. It just isn't what's most important. So thank you for the opportunity to be with you this evening and the opportunity to share some thoughts. I really appreciate this evening.
Well, Debbie, I have the honor of the concluding comments and remarks. So first of all, I would like to thank each and every attendee for joining us this evening. This evening was for you, and hopefully it was informative and you have taken a piece of learning from this evening. What a great evening learning from and with Dr. Debbie Pushor. Debbie always delivers her messages in such a warm, encouraging manner. Whenever we have an opportunity to learn from Debbie, we leave with more knowledge, more wisdom, and ideas that we can think about how we will implement some of these strategies here in Thames Valley to continue to build on the great parent engagement that we are currently fostering throughout our district. As part of our board's strategic priorities and our operational plan, building relationships and including our parents and our families in our children's learning is a focus for us as a system. As this pandemic has forced us into remote learning, we are committed to work closely with our families. Our educators, your children's teachers, are working extremely hard to deliver learning opportunities in a variety of ways that work best for each student and each family. We truly appreciate all the great ideas Debbie has shared with us tonight about what learning at home can look like. But most importantly, how each parent, guardian, family member is equipped to help their child through these times, but knowing that we are a team through this. Thank you, Debbie. Thank you for all of everything you've offered us tonight. I would also like to thank Chair of our board, Arlene Morrell, for her support and for her introductory comments. I would like to thank Sarah Thompson, the Chair of our Thames Valley Parent Involvement Committee, for being here also tonight and offering words of encouragement and support. Thank you to Sherry Hill for her support with her work behind the scenes and helping us. Thank you to Jim Bobier and Afiz Ajubwa, our IT technicians who really have made this evening possible. And thank you to our amazing communications team for all of their work promoting this event, which has attracted over 200 participants. So again, thank you to everyone. To everyone, stay healthy and well. Have a good evening.